In the good old days, wait, do I have to say the title?
Yes.
Okay. The ashes that made the trees bloom. In the good old days of the daimios, there lived an old couple whose only pet was a little dog. Having no children, they loved it as though it were a baby. The old dame made it a cushion of blue crepe, and at mealtime Muko, for that was its name, would sit on it as snug as any cat. The kind people fed the pet with tidbits of fish from their own chopsticks, and all the boiled rice it wanted. Thus treated, the dumb creature loved its protectors like a being with a soul. The old man, being a rice farmer, went daily with hoe or spade into the fields, working hard from morning until O Tento-sama, as the sun is called, had gone down behind the hills. Every day the dog followed him to work, never once harming the white heron that walked in the footsteps of the old man to pick up the worms. For the old fellow was patient and kind to everything that had life, and often turned up a sod on purpose to give food to the birds. One day the dog came running to him, putting his paws against his legs and motioning with his head to some spot behind. The old man at first thought his pet was only playing and did not mind it, but the dog kept on whining and running to and fro for some minutes. Then the old man followed the dog a few yards to a place where the animal began a lively scratching. Thinking it was possibly a buried bone or a bit of fish, the old man stuck his hoe in the earth when lo, a pile of gold gleamed before him. Thus in an hour the old couple were made rich. The good souls bought a piece of land, made a feast for their friends, and gave plentiful to their poor neighbors. As for the dog, they petted him till they nearly smothered him with kindness. Now in the same village there lived a wicked old man and his wife, not a bit sensitive and kind, who had always kicked and scolded all dogs whenever any passed their house. Hearing of their neighbor's good luck, they coaxed the dog into their garden and set before him bits of fish and other dainties, hoping he would find treasure for them. But the dog, being afraid of the cruel pair, would neither eat nor move. Then they dragged him out of the doors, taking a spade and a hoe with them. No sooner had the dog got near a pine tree growing in the garden than he began to paw and scratch the ground, as if a mighty treasure lay beneath. "Quick, wife, hand me the spade and hoe," cried the greedy old fool, as he danced with joy. Then the covetous old fellow, with a spade and the old crone with a hoe, began to dig. But there was nothing but a dead kitten, the smell which made them drop their tools and shut their noses. Furious at the dog, the old man kicked and beat him to death, and the old woman finished the work by nearly chopping off his head with a sharp hoe. Then they flung him into the hole and heaped the earth toward his carcass. The owner of the dog heard of the death of his pet, and mourning for him as if he had been his own child, went at night under the pine tree. He set up some bamboo tubes in the ground, such as are used before tombs, in which he put fresh flowers. Then he laid a cup of water and a tray of food on the grave and burned several costly sticks of incense. He mourned a great while over his pet, calling him many dear names, as if he were alive. That night the spirit of the dog appeared to him in a dream and said, "Cut down the pine tree over my grave, and make it from a mortar for your rich pastry and a mill for your bean sauce." So the old man chopped down the tree and cut out the middle of the trunk a section about 2 feet long. With great labor, partly by fire, partly by chisel, he scraped out a hollow place as big as a small bowl. Then he made a long-handled hammer of wood, such as is used for pounding rice. When New Year's time drew near, he wished to make some rice pastry. When the rice was all boiled, Granny put it into the mortar. The old man lifted his hammer to pound the mass into dough, and the blows fell heavy and fast till the whole pastry was all ready for baking. Suddenly the whole mass turned into a heap of gold coins. When the old woman took the hand mill and filling it with beans began to grind, the gold dropped like rain. Meanwhile the envious neighbor peeped in at the window when the broad beans were being ground. "Goody me!" cried the old hag, as she saw each dripping of sauce turn into yellow gold, until in a few minutes the tub under the mill was full of shining mass of gold. So the old couple were rich again. The next day the stingy and wicked neighbor came and borrowed the mortar and magic mill. They filled one with boiled rice and the other one with beans. Then the old man began to pound and the woman to grind. But at the first blow and turn, the pastry and sauce turned into a foul mass of worms. Still more angry at this, they chopped the mill into pieces to use as firewood. Not long after that, the good old man dreamed again, and the spirit of the dog spoke to him, telling him how the wicked people had burnt the mill made from the pine tree. "Take the ashes of the mill, sprinkle them on the withered tree, and they will bloom again," said the dog spirit. The old man awoke and went at once to his wicked neighbor's house, where he found their miserable old pair at the edge of their square fireplace, in the middle of the floor, smoking and spinning. From time to time they warmed their hands and feet with the blaze from some bits of the mill, while behind them lay a pile of the broken pieces. The good old man humbly asked for the ashes. Though the covetous couple turned up their noses at him and scolded him as if he were a thief, they let him fill his basket with the ashes. On coming home, the old man took his wife into the garden. It being winter, their favorite cherry tree was bare. He sprinkled a pinch of ashes on it, and lo! It sprouted blossoms until it became a cloud of pink blooms which perfumed the air. The news of this filled the village, and everyone ran out to see the wonder. The covetous couple also heard the story, and, gathering up the remaining ashes of the mill, kept them to make the withered trees blossom. The kind old man, hearing that his lord, the daimyo, was to pass along the high road near the village, set out to see him, taking his basket of ashes. As the train approached, he climbed up into an old withered cherry tree that stood by the wayside. Now, in the day of the daimyos, it was the custom, when their lord passed by, for all the loyal people to shut up their high windows. They even pasted them fast with a slip of paper, so as not to commit their impertinence of looking down on his lordship. All the people along the road would fall upon their hands and knees and remain prostrate until the procession passed by. The train drew near. One tall, competent man marched ahead, crying out to the people by the way, "Get down on your knees! Get down on your knees!" And everyone kneeled down while procession was passing. Suddenly, the leader of the van caught sight of the aged man up in the tree. He was about to call out to him in an angry tone, but seeing he was such an old fellow, he pretended not to notice him and passed him by. So when the daimyo's palanquin drew near, the old man, taking a pinch of ashes from his basket, scattered it all over the tree. In a moment, it burst into blossom. The delighted daimyo ordered the train to be stopped and got out to see the wonder. Calling the old man to him, he thanked him and ordered presents of silk robes, sponge cakes, fans, and other rewards to be given him. He even invited him to his castle. So the old man went gleefully home to share his joy with his dear old wife. But when the greedy neighbor heard of it, he took some of the magic ashes and went out on the highway. There he waited until a daimyo's train came along, and instead of kneeling down like the crowd, he climbed a withered cherry tree. When the daimyo himself was almost directly under him, he threw a handful of ashes over the tree, which did not change a particle. The wind blew the fine dust in the noses and eyes of the daimyo and his wife. Such sneezing and choking! It spoiled all the pomp and dignity of the procession. The man whose business it was to cry, "Get down on your knees," seized the old fool by the collar, dragged him from the tree, and tumbled him as his ash basket into the ditch by the road. Then, beating him soundly, he left him for the dead. Thus the wicked old man died in the mud, but the kind friend of the dog dwelt in peace and plenty, and both he and his wife lived in a green old age.